agenda and all the reports for today's meeting are on the city website at www.belleville.ca. Under the agenda, minutes, and live meeting icon on the left side of the screen, if you click on October 25th there on the calendar, it will bring you to the agenda for today's meeting. And there's a hyperlink located in the agenda in the event you wish to look at the individual reports so you can follow along. I will now call the meeting to order and state that all members of council are present. And I'll ask our Director of Corporate Services and City Clerk, Mr. Matt McDonald, to lead us in a moment of reflection.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, always having respect for others so that we may serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
Thank you. You may be seated. On the agenda, item number 3 is disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Any of my colleagues have anything like to disclose? None. We don't have any public meetings today, so we'll move to reading and confirmation of the regular council meeting minutes of October the 12th, 2021, and the regular in-camera meeting minutes of October 12th, 2021. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Feeney. Any questions or discussion on it? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. And we'll move to deputations. And it's my pleasure to ask Brandy Hodge, the Executive Director of the United Way, Hastings and Prince Edward, to come forward and to make a deputation to council. Good afternoon, Ms. Hodge.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Just press that red button on there to get the... There you go.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. On, off?
It's up to you.
Okay.
You're far enough away from us.
For a minute. Thanks for having me today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Brandy Hodge. I'm the Executive Director at United Way, Hastings and Prince Edward. And we're taking the opportunity at this time of year when we've launched our annual fundraising campaign to tour all of the municipalities and then do some deputations and raise awareness and talk about the importance of the United Way campaign. The leadership team here at the City of Belleville has already heard from me this week, I think last week maybe. So for those of you who are listening to this for the second time, I apologize and you can tune me out. As I said, this time of year, it's really important that all of us and all of you as elected officials understand the importance of the United Way campaign and the impact that it has and the impact that donors enable across our region. We are 100% local, so we do fundraise on behalf of on behalf of Hastings and Prince Edward region as a whole. The City of Belleville is a huge part of that, as is the City of Belleville a huge part of our annual fundraising campaign. We are a little bit more like a Dairy Queen than we are a Procter & Gamble, I always say. So as much as we are part of the United Way Canada membership team, we are independently incorporated. We have our own registered charitable number. We have our own board of directors. We are very much an autonomous organization who uses the brand of United Way Canada, which means that all of the money that is raised in this community stays right here in this community with United Way, Hastings and Prince Edward. This is just a quick list, not that you can all read it, but of our funded agencies. And these are the agencies that we partner with, sometimes annually. Some of them have been around for a really long time and a funded partner of ours. Some of them are new. They turn over each year. We fundraise on behalf of about 51 different agencies last year, representing 93 different programs. That means that we are fundraising on their behalf and that those organizations, none of the organizations that we fund, have professional paid fundraisers on staff. We are their fundraisers. That's why it is one federated appeal to the whole community on behalf of the whole community. Everything that we do is done under 3 pillars. And the first one is all that kids can be. So we're very focused on making sure that every child has the basic building blocks to stay on track, to succeed in school and in life. United Way, Hastings and Prince Edward gives kids and youth the support that they need to get a great start in life and to do well in school and reach their full potential. As many of you know and have heard over the last number of years, our region continues to trail behind provincial averages in many indicators of school success. We fund a variety of programs that supply homework help and computers and just somebody to assist with that school's success. 2,760 kids accessed supports last year that enabled them to succeed in school. 84% of them increased their grades. 83% of youth who were at risk of not graduating high school on time, who were participating in programs and supports funded through United Way with that very specific goal in mind, 83% of them ended up graduating on time. The second pillar is poverty to possibility. 26,000 food boxes and food hampers were delivered across our region, over half of them to residents in the city of Belleville. We all know that our community is currently struggling with the cost of housing and a homelessness that is rising at a fairly rapid rate. Prevention is key, and we do work with organizations that try to help people who are currently at risk of homelessness to keep their housing and not drop into that homeless range. Prevention is going to be vital. We don't have the social infrastructure around us in our community to support a growing homeless population. We need to keep people who are currently housed in their housing with whatever support's necessary to keep them there. And strong communities is the last one. And if this pandemic has showed us anything, it has showed us how quickly people drop from dependence into vulnerability. And last year as seniors, they may have been in the grocery store on Monday, and on Tuesday they were told that they needed to stay home. And the social service sector rose to the occasion, and they made sure that supports and services were available to them to keep them home where they were safe. 819 seniors were assisted to stay independent across our region. So we are widely known as a funder and a fundraiser, and that is what we're most known for. Our thermometer goes up the beginning of September, it comes down January 31, we announce to the community how much we raise. I sometimes wonder why we do that to ourselves. That's a lot of pressure over every year. But we are so much more than a fundraiser and a funder organization. We are a network that provides an opportunity for not-for-profit sector to share and learn from each other. We help to gather data and share data and measures of success so we know how we're doing as a community. We are often a lead agency, and when appropriate, a partner agency in trying to establish collaborative solutions to some of our more pressing problems. We are a year-round organization, and 2020 was a remarkable year in so many ways, some better than others. United Way Hastings and Prince Edward had a record-breaking fundraising year last year. Between the annual fundraising campaign and the specialized COVID-19 Community Response Fund, we raised over $2.1 million over the course of that fundraising year. Our community members felt compelled to help their friends and neighbors and their family, and it was a humbling experience to say the least. That said, it was also a time of tremendous pressure on the not-for-profit sector. The pandemic wreaked havoc across the country, the province, and our community. And as a direct result of the economic shutdown, there was a significant pressure placed on the not-for-profit sector to respond. The federal government did allocate a $350 million emergency community support fund, and many of you may be familiar with the fact that they used the United Way network across Canada to distribute those funds. It's important to note that those funds were intended for the last fiscal year. They did not roll over into April 1. They were intended only to provide supports and relief from pandemic-related costs. There was no sustainability funding and there was no operations funding. The importance of the United Way campaign last year was vitally important to the sustainability of some organizations, was the difference between them keeping their doors open or closed. The United Way Hastings and Prince Edward remains consistent in our community. We own some significant statistics that directly impact the people who live here. We experience higher than average poverty rates, lower than average on-time high school graduation rates, higher than average youth unemployment rates, higher than average housing costs, lower than average median income, higher than provincial rates for teenage pregnancy, higher out-migration rates where youth are leaving our community and not necessarily coming back. We need to invest in programs and services that address not only these acute issues, but also the root causes of these issues so that we can change our community narrative. United Way is a different type of organization in that we do the work for the donor. And so when a donor contributes to the United Way campaign, we implement an RFP process. We call on the not-for-profit sector to submit funding applications for programs and services that are necessary. We vet those applications. We recruit teams of volunteers who review their financial statements, their governance structures, their budgets, their program impact, and we invest where the impact is greatest across the whole region. As many of you know, Mr. Morris Rowlands was an incredible part of the Success of United Way campaign. In 2008, he started the Morris Rowlands Friends and Leadership Challenge. And this past summer, we lost Mr. Rowlands. His family has informed us, though, that they will continue the legacy of giving that he has started and will continue with the Morris and Marilyn Rowlands Foundation Leadership and Friends Challenge, which really enables a tremendous amount of giving and leverages a tremendous amount of giving across our community. So we are extremely grateful for that. The reason we're here is we're not asking for anything. The City of Belleville does a tremendous amount. They run an employee payroll campaign, they run events, they dedicate staff to making sure that the United Way campaign is successful here. That said, we need our elected officials to be ambassadors on behalf of the campaign. We are the largest funder of the not-for-profit sector outside of government. And without the success of the United Way campaign means that programs and services cannot be successful. So we need you to be ambassadors. If you ever have questions about the impact that the United Way has, our audited financial statements are on our website, our annual reports are on our website. You are welcome to call and ask any questions. We are as transparent and as accountable as can possibly be. So we invite that scrutiny and those questions so that you can be comfortable in endorsing the campaign. Is there any questions?
Thank you very much, Ms. Hodge. Appreciate your presentation. Colleagues, anybody have any questions or comments for Ms. Hodge? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. First of all, Brandy, thanks very much for the presentation. It's always nice to see that through challenging times, the United Way continues to really provide. Just some of your notes today, you touched on housing issues, jobs, teenage pregnancy, education, and how the United Way continues to give people helping hands. So it did not paint a nice picture for this area, but the supports are still there. I was on your website, and you referred to it today in your deputation, 8,760 nights of accommodation in a transitional home setting. Can you just kind of update all of us what that setting is and how successful that program is? Thank you.
So we fund, it used to be Canadian Mental Health Association. They've now rebranded to the Enrichment Center, and they fund the only 3 transitional houses for the general population in the City of Belleville. So they have 3 homes, and we fund those programs. We also work with Youth Hab. We don't fund their transitional housing program, but they do offer transitional housing for young people. We know that in order to become stabilized, people need to be able to count on housing. You're never going to resolve any social issue if someone is living on the street or is really worried about where they're going to sleep the following night. So transitional housing is that vital step between homelessness to permanent housing. And the transitional housing offers 364 days of housing, so it's 1 year less a day in order to kind of try to stabilize and get get some payment processes and some supports and some programs in place in order that they can secure permanent housing moving forward.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Thompson.
Just a quick question. Thank you very much for coming, Randy.
Of course.
On this issue of seniors, you talked about 819 seniors were helped. Are you finding there's a fairly significant increase in your numbers of helping for seniors in this community?
Absolutely. And we are not a direct service organization by any stretch of the imagination. We fund direct service organizations. But over the course of the pandemic, we implemented a grocery shopping and delivery program. So we were out in the grocery store buying groceries, delivering them to seniors so that they could stay home. And what we're hearing from all of our senior serving organizations is that they are experiencing a large uptick. And they're not only experiencing new people coming to them for help, but they need subsidized help. So they need help with paying for Meals on Wheels, not just the fact that they need Meals on Wheels. And so that's a lot of what we're funding right now is funding to the community care organizations so that they can help subsidize the delivery of meals to seniors at home. The cost of food has increased incredibly, and they're having a hard time stretching their budget. So we're seeing people, and especially seniors, who have perhaps never asked for help in their lives, having to ask for help now.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that is I happen to know, was contacted by a lady, and I suggested the Meals on Wheels, and she said, you know, I can't even afford the Meals on Wheels to come to my house. So that's where it gets to be a big concern. I mean, is the impact we're having on seniors in our community and how we can reach out to help them. But so through you, for that person that would have contacted me, is there an agency that they would go to maybe help resolve that,
Yep,
that you could say
definitely.
tonight?
So Community Care South Hastings, I'm assuming the person lives in the city of Belleville.
Yes.
That is who serves the Meals on Wheels program in the city of Belleville, and we fund them for subsidization. So as long as they're meeting some criteria to be financially eligible, they would be able to access subsidized
Thank you.
meals.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Hodge, for coming, and thank you for you and your entire group. We're very proud that Inspector Sherry Meeks is one of your chairs this year
And
on
now,
that campaign.
Fire Chief Monique Belair is on our council or cabinet as well.
Oh, wonderful,
So, yeah.
excellent. And certainly Councillor Sandison and Councillor Feeney and Councillor Thompson and myself were really pleased to be there for your kickoff where you announced your number, and we look forward to hearing you successfully achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
So I'm looking for a resolution that the deputation by Brandy Hodge, Executive Director, United Way, Hastings and Prince Edward, regarding the response of the not-for-profit sector during COVID and the increased need be received. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Feeney. Any questions? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to welcome to the podium Marjorie Buck, who is the president of the Kiwanis Club of Belleville. Welcome back, Ms. Buck, not just as president, but also welcome back to a familiar place. Nice to see you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for allowing me to speak this afternoon on behalf of the Kiwanis Club of Belleville. I have with me this afternoon Mr. Ed Hallman, past president of the club as well. Don't be shy.
No, you carry on.
Okay. So, the Kiwanis Club of Belleville, we're in our 99th year, and we're getting ready for our 100th anniversary. And the first thing we would like to do is some improvements along the Kiwanis Bayshore Trail and the Kiwanis Bayshore Park. We are applying for a grant. Gotta make sure I do this correct. It's been a while. Move forward. From the Commonwealth LEAF program. The LEAF program stands for Learning and Engagement Acceleration Fund. And we had the opportunity to receive this application because one of our members happens to be involved with insurance, and the Commonwealth Mutual Insurance are the sponsors of this particular program. One of the first things we would like to do is to replace the existing pergola, which was put in by our club at our 75th anniversary. And unfortunately, at that time, I was president as well. And a retread, what can I say? So the Kiwanis Club had started this whole project with the former director of Parks, Mr. Lloyd Sire, who was a Kiwanian as well. And I sort of continued in the role of Kiwanian as I worked with the city of Belleville. Now I'm retired, and I'm here on the other side looking for some support. Our first change, of course, would be to dispose of this, and the city staff actually sent us a letter about 2 years ago asking what we would like to do. At that time, we didn't have the commitment of grants. Now we're hoping we will. So, first change, for those people who don't recognize that site, that is the trail that now is in between the north and south parking lot of the Jane Forrester Park. We have noticed when we've been down there that the pergola, even when it was in great shape, was not necessarily used as the entrance, even though that was the intent. So we would like to put a new structure there, and we think it's ideal because when you turn around, interlocking brick there would be a perfect place for registration for when you have walks or runs along the Kiwanis Bay Shore Trail. The new entrance, we would like to duplicate the structure that is on Memory Lane, which our club did not put in. As we all know, the Kiwanis Bay Shore Trail is a facility that has attracted many organizations to support the city in its development. So we would like to repeat that. We were instrumental in the development of the Kiwanis Freestone Point, which was named in honor of the late Bob Freestone, president of our club, but also a long-serving member of the Parks Harbor Board when it was a board, and he continued when it went to a committee. I actually believe Bob stayed on as long as he had his health, so he committed not only to the service through Kiwanis, but also directly by committee involvement. Now, the LEAF program is a program where you're looking at learning and engaging as you go along. So our approach is to the Commonwealth. We have historical monuments along our trail. We have canteens that provide service that need to be upgraded. However, our thought is that we need to put some banners and identification as to what is there. And this is your north parking lot along the Kiwanis Bay Shore Trail. It's your north parking lot at the George Street boat ramp. If you ever go for a walk on that trail and you're at the boat ramp, you'll see single cars in the area that was designed for vehicles and trailers. And the staff have expressed that they need to highlight that area so we can get the walkers along the trail to use that. So we're proposing to put banners there and make that parking lot stand out, and hopefully will help the fishermen or the person launching the huge boat at the boat ramp. Again, stressing the fact that there are many organizations. This pergola was donated to the city of Belleville. It was in the whole Memory Lane, was supported by your community. Once upon a time, Belleville Utilities, they did some stormwater management ponds along that trail. Now, storyboards. One of the things we're proposing is that when it comes to the stormwater management, that board has been there for a good number of years, but it really doesn't explain what is in those stormwater management ponds and how to identify them. You have ducks of all kinds landing there. You have, the staff told me the other day, they believe it was a black crown heron, which is kind of unusual in this area. But they spotted it, they looked it up, and so we think we need storyboards about the birds there as well. You have one for turtles, but it needs to be upgraded. It's in bad shape. Now, of course, there's nothing like the history of our city, and of course we were very much a railroad town at one time. And when we removed the locomotive from Zwick's Park, this is what it was replaced with, and it's along the Kiwanis Bay Shore Trail. And I had to throw this in, that's my father, he was a railroader. This is your original monument acknowledging the development of the then known as East Bay Shore Park. It was officially changed in the 75th anniversary of our club to the Kiwanis Bay Shore Park. You'll see, at that time we called it the Kiwanis Fitness Trail. And all of the light standards as we went along, between the department and our club, we got donations, and you continue to get those donations, which is great. Native plants, one of my thoughts in regards that we have all kinds of trees and unique plants along there. Again, doing the same thing here as what we did with the, or proposed to do at the stormwater management pond, is to identify them. There are swamp willows down there. They're not just willow trees, they're swamp willows. And then people question why the staff drop those large trees into the water. And there's a reason for it, because you got all kinds of bank beavers down there, and it saves the beavers coming up. Those little stories would explain to people why you're doing what you're doing. And of course, our trail is used. Bicyclists of all ages, and I deliberately kept the distance so that you can't identify that senior citizen. And there's young parents with their children in their strollers out for walks. This was just taken, all these photographs were taken last Wednesday. You have the Rotary Treescape, the Rotary Fitness Equipment, the Saturn Playground, Schizophrenia Society of Ontario made some donations. And of course, our most recent creation by the city and volunteers is the Dr. Culhane Monument. And that was an outstanding service. It was a great program that day. Our first community organization that worked with the city of Belleville and took over what used to be the site of a recreation program when I was program coordinator is the Quinney Rowing Club. We had an Olympian rower come into our community, wanted rowing to be part of our activities. He came to the city, they gave him the building, and they have an outstanding facility there now. Those boats on the left-hand side belong to the Dragon Boat organization. And of course, a lot of our development as a city, when it came to the Kiwanis Bay Shore Trail in the 90s, was done in conjunction with the Waterfront Regeneration Trust Fund. So I'm here today asking for council's support. We do need community partners when we submit for the LEAF program grant. So I would like, if possible, council to consider giving us a written letter of support of our application to this program. And I'm also looking for potential financial support towards this whole project. The project itself, the entranceway, I've been advised, the committee has been advised by city staff that entrance could cost us $40,000 to $50,000. The banners are going to be in the neighborhood of $8,000 because we want them along the trail at key locations, and then the storyboards. So we're estimating this project is going to be approximately $100,000. Thank you. I think my time is up. Any questions?
Great, thank you very much, Ms. Buck. Anyone have any questions or comments? Councillor Feeney.
Thank you very much for this, and also thank you so much for the great work that you do and continue to do. I would be all in support of providing that letter to help with the application and anything else that we might be able to do to help you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Malette.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Buck. Great to see you. Great to hear the good works of Kiwanis, and I've known that for a number of years. I used to attend your meetings regularly when I was making a living covering those meetings, and had some great meals at the Kiwanis Center. As chair of the Green Task Force, I'm quite intrigued by your proposal to expand the storyboards, and I would greatly encourage any effort to see that along there, because, you know, the natural, as you just pointed out in a couple of instances, the natural benefits of the native plants along the bay shore, the native tree species, some of the tree species. I would like to see that. Now, is that part of the budgetary, or is that part of your LEAF?
That will be part of the $100,000 is to get those storyboards created.
Well, I would like, yes, and I'll wholeheartedly support that as well, because I do think education along there, and just the sheer number of people that go along that trail in a day, it's a great education piece for environmental initiatives and the gem that we have down there. So I will greatly support that. Thanks very much, Mark.
Great. Councillor Alsop.
Yes, thank you very much, Marjorie, for coming today and for your wonderful presentation. I think we first met probably 17 or 18 years ago working on the Kiwanis skate park. And I greatly appreciate your assistance with that, and certainly myself and a lot of kids grew up there, and it was a very valuable asset for us. And thank you for your continued involvement in the community, both personally and through the Kiwanis organization. With those storyboards that we were talking about, are there some sort of new visual aspects, maybe images of the animals, the plants, things like that might be a little bit more dynamic and would draw people a little bit more to the storyboards?
Yes, what we're looking at is more of having photographs of the plants and a description. But for instance, the easiest way you can tell the difference between a red oak and a white oak is the fact that a red oak tree has pointed leaves. You poke yourself with a sharp point and you draw blood. That's how I remembered it. But this whole thing of being able to identify plants and trees and understand why our park system people are also not mowing right down to the shoreline. There is a reason, and we need to explain that to people. We need to have people more aware of the environment. And I was pleased actually at the Dr. Collop presentation at the library. I was sitting beside a member of the Quinney Regional Science and Technology Fair, and they have expressed interest in supporting and given us a letter of support for this as well. So it's not just council. There are the history teachers, the science teachers, the organizations that focus on what we're aiming to do. We, as a club, you as a city, I believe, have got the greatest waterfront going. I worked for a period of time in Kingston, and we have lots of high-rises there. I grew up in this area, and we were very fortunate to have the director of the day have the foresight to try to grab as much waterfront and keep it for the city as possible. Mr. Sire is still here in the city of Belleville, deserves the majority of the credit. The staff that followed him did work, yes, but if it wasn't his vision, it wouldn't have happened.
Great, thank you.
Good. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just thank you very much for the presentation, and I think we all appreciate the commitment that the Kiwanis Club, you mentioned almost for 100 years now here in Belleville, for everything you do in the community, and you highlighted some of those today, and particularly for the youth in our community with the Children's Safety Village. You know, you got the Kids Got Talent at the Empire Theatre, you're involved with that. And I think this is a question that many in Belleville might be asking since you're here tonight. Will the chicken dinner come back in full form next June?
Does anybody know what's going to happen with COVID? It didn't happen for the last 2 years because of COVID. I happen to be a member of another Kiwanis Club. We did do a drive-through chicken barbecue. It went well, but it's only half the size of what we do here in the city. So time will tell what's going to happen. So, but and if I may take the advantage of the fact that your new fire chief is here, and to let her know the first community project that this club ever did for the city of Belleville was to go around and paint every fire hydrant in the city because it was a boys coming home celebration. So we started with the city, and we hope to continue with the city.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Buck. And also, we would be remiss following up on Councillor Kelly's point if we didn't talk about the amazing Kiwanis Kite Festival that is not just for the young people, although we get lots of young people, but for the whole community, and it was great to see you there. It's great to see you back as president of the club, and we're very proud that you were a very contributing member of Belleville City staff. So thank you for that. My colleagues, I'm looking for a resolution, and I'm going to add to it that the deputation by Marjorie Buck, president of Kiwanis Club of Belleville, regarding a project for the 100th anniversary of the Kiwanis Club be received, and that a letter of support for the LEAF application be provided to the Kiwanis Club of Belleville. Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Feeney. Any questions? I'll just point out that there is a, I'm not sure what the terminology is, but there is a signage proposal coming as part of the capital budget, which will deal with a number of projects. I'm not sure if the Kiwanis one is contemplated, but we'll have an opportunity to specifically discuss you know, potentially adding this or making a modification of the recommendations to include it. So, motions on the floor, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to call on John Hack, our consultant with Sierra Planning, to come forward to make a deputation to council. Good afternoon, Mr. Hack. Nice to see you again. And I know that the draft Parks and Recreation Master Plan, that draft final report, was circulated amongst council and made for some very interesting reading.
Good. Good afternoon, Your Worship, members of council and staff and members of the public. I will do my best to go through this relatively quickly. We have, as Your Worship has indicated, provided a copy of the draft plan and in addition provided a presentation overview, which itself is still quite meaty. And so what I'm going to do with your indulgence is go through that relatively quickly, not focus on every detail. This is a presentation that is also very good if uploaded to the website thereafter. It gives, I think, members of the public a quick overview, relatively speaking, compared to reading the entirety of the plan, but I'll get to the whole question of next steps as we go on. So on with the presentation. Just a few slides just to confirm again, it's been a while since we're in front of you, and this has been a long process. And my thanks, firstly, to every member of staff that's helped us along the way. These kinds of plans don't get done overnight or quickly, and there is a tremendous amount of detail and discussion that has to take place every step along the way. So if you can just recall, this is the master plan itself, which is phase 2. There's also a big phase 1 report, which sort of sets everything in stone in terms of a lot of the metrics that are required going forward. So there's a lot of good information that ourselves and our sub-consultants have been able to do. Anyway, project scope, really pretty much everything. It was an interesting presentation to hit active fields as well as service delivery as a whole. The engagement has been progressive through the process, and just to give you a highlight there have been a number of things that have gone on, but I'll just center on discussions that we've had. We've obviously had, seems like a long time ago now, discussions with members of council. An online user group survey gave us 671 responses, so that's organized groups, and that's a very good response to hear from 71 groups of that, 71 groups in total. And a public online survey of 773 responses. That's great. That's much better than average. The results of which gives us some confidence, the number of themes, and there's a lot of detail here. But coming out of this, in terms of the reasons for doing a plan and the significance of moving forward with it, budget allowing as you go forward, is really captured in these themes, which is people want to see continued investment in the modern facilities that you have. Very much interested in connectivity and accessibility as it relates to bikes and walking and linking neighborhoods. Obviously, I don't need to talk about the importance of addressing the bifurcation of the city through the 401, and that's a long-standing process to overcome that. But this kind of plan, I think, is something that you use to the benefit to try and get the partnerships with the province, Ministry of Transportation and so on to enact some changes. Existing Parkland and facility renewal, that's a big one. And you know, the general drive for recognizing the quality of life in Belleville goes hand in hand with better park and open space facilities. Public survey comments in some detail. Bit of a complicated donut there, but what it's really saying is about 1/3 of people had almost all of their recreation needs taken care of, which is always good to hear when you survey people. About another third had about half of their recreation needs met in the city, and then, you know, a further third either get some benefit or actually get all of their needs met. So all in all, that says to us that Belleville is where you come to get your recreation. Certainly that's true for residents of the city. It's also true for residents that are not in the city. And that's a question that I think this plan needs to address as well. In terms of questions about program delivery, you know, again, a very positive response in terms of the satisfaction with interactions with staff and also the program development that's been put in place. So that was a real benefit to us to be able to build off of that. Again, in terms of the public survey, you've actually seen this one, but probably a year ago now. In terms of where people live, it does make a difference to what they're saying is important. And as you can see in the areas north of the highway 401, it is about connection south to the 401, but also the establishment of sufficient neighborhood parks and connections within. It's not all about going south of the 401, it's about connection within those subdivisions as well. And then slight differences east or west of the Moira, depending on the views of people who responded. But you can see there fields, tennis courts, playgrounds, things of that nature. All of these things are addressed in the plan. User group satisfaction, I won't go into detail here, but that sort of black squiggle there is meant to show that, you know, no surprises. For those newer facilities, the good facilities in terms of where you've put your investment over the last 10 years, very strong levels of satisfaction. And generally, because you don't have, for a city your size, you don't have that many indoor facilities. You've gone through that process of change. Generally speaking, very positive. Obviously, some of them less so, and they're the older community centres. On the outdoor fields, again, remember this is underlined there, it's a user group. It's not the public here speaking, it's user groups. So user groups like the indoor facilities that you have, not surprising. User group satisfaction with some of the outdoor fields, this is much more typical of what we find, and you can see it's quite variable. So we know that this plan needs to respond to some of those needs as well, be it for ball diamonds, soccer, rugby, whatever it might be. The other aspect that's driving this plan, and we have to recognize it, is that everyone is getting older. And so you can see quite significantly there. I wouldn't say it's dramatically different than other places in Ontario, but you're seeing a national trend there for aging. And by the time you get to 2041, you know, fully a quarter of the population are going to be 55 or over. Now, that's a big age group, so we can't, you know, what's true of a 55-year-old is not true of an 85-year-old in terms of the needs for recreation. But it does tell us that we need to be cognizant of that. At the same time, you know, you're going to see a lot of growth. I'm convinced you're going to see a lot of growth coming out of the GTA just because of the nature of that. Very little to do with COVID. I think it's just a natural progression. And so those kinds of opportunities are to serve the needs of younger families moving in. So in other words, as we say quite often, the plan, you know, the population is growing older and it's growing younger at the same time. In other words, you have to plan for everybody. So on that, just to summarize, the drivers of the plan, without any question, Belleville is a really quite significant regional centre, even if that's not necessarily the sort of historic lens that's been brought to bear. It's clear to us that that is the case. Population growth, as I've just mentioned, is relatively complicated, and we'll see whether the population targets that are in play at the moment get altered when the census reports and when other aspects of the census are reporting as well. The third point there, I can't emphasize enough, as we work around the province, we hear quite often how the Quincy Sport and Wellness Centre is held up as an example of best practice in terms of the quality of the facility and the range of services provided to it. And so one of the key themes is making sure that that is continued and maintained going forward. The city's active involvement in investment, going back to sort of 2012. And then the last thing that I'm aware of significance was the addition of the seating at the Spectator venue within that building. That, again, has been very well received. So these are the kinds of things that we need to build on in our planning. At the same time, you've done all of that without a plan in place. And so I think it's important that we do that. And as it relates to parks planning, I think that's essentially the reason, for these terms to have been put together a year or so ago, was that there is a need to have a plan in place that enables investment in parks, because it has been lacking. If you look at the amenities in place currently versus what you would expect in the city, there need to be some improvements. So that's one thing straight away that the plan can address. And the Waterfront Plan, of course, the waterfront is tremendous and a real asset. And the plan that was done, I think, in 2005 or 2006, that's now 15, 16 years out of date. So you can see some of our words here are focused on coming up with a way to address what is a very large linear waterfront plan. And we can discuss that. The elements of the vision, we've put down elements of the vision here, and I'm really hopeful that when we go back to the public at the end of this, if council is good with us going out for public consultation on the draft, that members of the public will help us craft. We can have an exercise of crafting a vision. But some of the elements that came out were quality of life, economic development, placemaking as a whole. So there's a number of very positive statements that we've received from people, and I hope that at the end of the day you don't have a consultant's vision written in this plan. We have something that's been endorsed by members of the public as well. Guiding principles. This slide, with all of the dynamic things that will occur over the course of the plan as it relates to services for recreation, culture, the intersection with tourism, infrastructure, having guiding principles that council can make decisions on is probably the most important thing out of all of it. And so just to give you an indication here of the guiding principles that we've come up with, and this would be front and center for any public consultation, is as follows, and I'll just highlight them. So strategic investment in major recreation infrastructure. As good as the Quincy Sport and Wellness Centre is, there needs to be active planning going forward to ensure that as the city grows and that facility ages, that you maintain that best practice status, that you have best-in-class status. Recognize and leverage the city's regional role. 60% of users of the Quincy Sport and Wellness Centre, I think, were city residents, but 40% were not. And that tells you the significance. That's almost half of the users of the facility come from outside of the city limits. And that's something which I think speaks to the significance to create economic impact. And therefore, the next principle is balance what you're putting pressure on the Quincy and Sport and Wellness Centre to do. It cannot be all things to all people. And so it needs to be carefully managed going forward. And you'll see when we get to some of the recommendations, there are ways that we suggest that be done. Near term, recreation hubs. Having something developed equivalent to Marianne Sills, but probably not at Marianne Sills, because that's a relatively tight site. And then the other main struts of this are the connectivity, doing more for the areas in Thurlow and above. And then ensuring that the plan is integrated across departments as well. The asset management, doing as much as you can with what you have already, that shouldn't be lost as well. So the big move, so the rest of this presentation is really to go through in a sort of canned version the categories of things that we're talking about, rather than go through the 140 recommendations that there are. In terms of these big moves, the first service direction that we put forward was delivering effective recreation services. That does not mean that you're not delivering recreation services effectively, but it means that there needs to be a maintenance of that and integration going forward. So a couple of quite exciting things, I think, is EDS, RCCS, and Transportation and Operations all have a really important role in this plan. And rather than allocate the implementation of this plan to one part of the administration, it really has to be all of them. And I think the integration of staffing resources will help with that, and also the creation of policy documents as well. So that stuff is, you can see it's relatively dry, but it's very, very important. So your approach to Parkland dedication is going to help sort out issues about how developers are brought into the process to get the right kinds of public spaces, tree canopy issues, design standards. These are all things which are part and parcel of effective planning. The next one, in terms of investment, well, two categories. One is state of good repair, as we call it. So there are a number of existing assets that need to be maintained with good capital reserves in place. But it cuts across. If you look through the back of the plan, you'll see recommendations ranging from management of the shoreline or the riverbank and the Moira, through to signage, through to master planning for some of these individual parks that we've allocated as having a role. And then building better capacity. A lot of existing facilities, generally, there's a way to improve utilization before you actually have to build something new. And so that's as simple as better lighting, better management of allocation of time, a little bit of changing the culture of use as the city gets bigger. Maybe your ice time and your access to the ball diamond is going to have to be more of a compromise than it might historically have been. These are small ways that you can do more with what you have already. In terms of the new facility requirements, what we've tried to do in the plan, and I'm going to be looking to the public to either agree with us or give us some instructions to do more, but to recognize the differences between the urban and rural areas. And what I mean by that is things like walkable access to parks. It means one thing in the built-up area, it means another in the hamlets that make up the balance. At the same time, we want to make sure we have hubs. So the Jerry Masterson area, as you can see from reading it, we've put a lot of effort into making sure that is everything it can be in terms of meeting citywide needs for some of the fields. So we take a standards approach to planning. So if the population exceeds what is being currently projected, your standards will guide you to make decisions quicker. If it slows down, that's it. Planning for indoor and planning for outdoor, and then investment in new multi-use capability. So what we are suggesting is there's no immediate requirement to run out and find X millions of dollars to build a new multi-use community recreation center. But it's pretty clear to us as you look at the change that's going to happen over time that by the end of the planning period, by 2031, 2032, a strong argument can be made for building a new multi-use recreation complex. It will not be as big as the Quinney Sport and Wellness Center, but it will meet particular needs going forward, probably on aquatics, and certainly as it relates to the possibility of rinks. Right now, over the next sort of 2 or 3 years, the focus really needs to be on what is that program and the opportunity, where's the land, where should it be? We have some thoughts, they're in the plan. We'll wait to see what the public thinks, but the land and location, and then the partnerships. If this is a city-owned facility, a city-provided facility, that's one thing. If it's something that's going to be potentially of regional significance, we're seeing more and more the willingness of municipalities to talk to each other about what the opportunities might be for cost-sharing new facilities, and that impacts the location as well. Ball diamonds, just to give you an indication, one of the things we heard from, I think, from this council table was get the distribution for active fields as equitable as you can. And so we see the distribution there for existing ball diamonds. There is a distribution. It's not all in one spot, which is good. The question is then what do you do going forward? And that's in the plan. In terms of rectangular sports fields, so that's soccer essentially, junior, senior, and then rugby fields and anything else like that. The distribution there, you can see Zwicks, Marianne Sills, Riverside, Jerry Masterson, and where should it go in the future? We've left that open because I think there are a number of planning exercises that the city can undertake to help that. It doesn't have to be in any one particular location, other than it does need to sort of be generally accessible to most people, and that is likely going to mean it's south of the 401. So we've got an indication there along Bell Boulevard, but it's not. That is really just an illustration on our part. So on diamonds, it's about optimization and improvement. The Thurlow Park Master Plan, that has been in play before. I think it should be reconsidered with a new diamond complex. Obviously, we're not, as master planners, guided by saying you must do this as a blueprint. I think the point is that is an area for significant investment, and we'd like to see it happen. And I think there needs to be a master planning process continued with that to arrive at the mix of uses. Rectangular fields, again, optimization and improvement, lighting, possibility of another field turf facility, because that gives you at least a field and a half when you put in field turf. And then a few other aspirations as well. Again, Thurlow, and doing something potentially to the south of MA Sills. Traditional courts, and this is where the city is relatively deficient, and so I think work needs to happen quickly, and I think council's already committed to making some changes for things like pickleball and so forth. But traditional courts, there needs to be some investment there, and then the new needs and opportunities that are possible there, including not only pickleball, but other sports as well that could be taken on board, which reflect the diversification. Things like cricket, you don't need to build multiple cricket fields, but there may be a consideration for getting one that's in municipal ownership as well. Very quickly, just on to basketball, that is a very significant deficit, and so we're proposing for a number of locations to be developed for that throughout the city. Playground distribution, there are gaps. You can see the gaps there with the purple dots. Again, that'll be a work in progress over the plan period. Splash pad distribution. Splash pads, it's pretty well distributed, but there are always opportunities for more. The only thing we would say is it may not be heavy investment like splash pads. It could be spray pads and other things that go on along with play equipment. And then lastly, on service direction for parks, open space and trails. These are the kinds of things we're looking at, making sure everyone understands what the hierarchy should be for the parks. It will help in planning for where things should go. So that you put active fields in the right locations and you leave other areas open for passive recreation for the public, and you leave the waterfront to be developed based on the aspirations of everyone involved. Parkland distribution and walkability, pretty good. Proposed Parkland hierarchy, I'm not going to go into the details, but we've identified, and this would be in the official plan, destination parks, community parks, neighborhood parkettes, and then more naturalized areas. That results in a classification of the map of parks. This is important so you know where to put different kinds of facilities going forward. And then lastly, implementing the plan. If this plan is going to be evergreen, meaning something that can be implemented progressively over 10 years or thereabouts, it's going to have a careful eye watching it. It's going to have to be relevant in every year's budget deliberations. So we're talking about using the existing funding sources that you have, Parkland dedication, capital reserves, development charges going forward. I mean, any plan like this, I think you can see that there needs to be a conversation about the staffing resources that are going to be required internally to make this happen. There's not a lot of this being outsourced. We're talking about operational control, design. There's only so far that consulting dollars can go in terms of getting materials. there's going to have to be some consideration of it. We've spoken as staff and consultant, and there are recommendations that I think council can interpret based on their needs. Next steps, post the reports for full review, a public meeting, I think certainly really as soon as we can, and certainly before we bump into the Christmas period, revisions as necessary thereafter, and then back to council for your consideration. So I'll leave it at that. Sorry for the long presentation, but it's a big plan.
No need to apologize. Like, this is very important to not just, I think, our council, but to the residents. And you know, Mr. Hack, late this winter, you came with the first draft for the Phase 1 report for this back in April, and I read it and made lots of notes, and I did the same with this final draft. And I have a couple of questions that I would like to start off with. You know, first of all, I just want to say, like I did in the springtime, this is a very good update. We are making some big progress, and COVID has done nothing but reinforce the importance of all these topics. And so the first question I have for you is more of a philosophical one, and it comes from members of the community who have concerns about our active transportation facilities, but specifically with cycling facilities. And so where is the best repository for those plans for cycling and an active transportation network? Is it best in the transportation master plan, or is it best in the Parkland and recreation master plan?
Thanks for the tough question, Your Worship. I think it has to be both. I mean, the plan deals with the off-road, and so recreation. Active transportation was part of the transportation master plan, but you do see more and more that active transportation is seen as a discrete category. And so I think the short answer is, I think that it's not just a transportation matter, for sure, and it's not just a recreation matter. When you go onto on-street cycling networks, everybody has to be involved, I think. As it relates to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, we're dealing generally with the off-road condition. You know, getting cycling as part of multi-use trails is very important as well. So if you're going to look at it as a system as a whole, I think everyone has to be involved.
Well, I think we need to look at it, and we need to coordinate it and connect and have connectivity for all of our trails and our on-street and our off-street portions.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, you know, certainly some members from the public get frustrated because they keep getting told, well, that's actually a transportation related issue. Well, and then no, that's part of the trail network, you know, and so we need to do there. But I think, you know, somebody has to make a decision about where it lies as a priority, because it needs to get done. And right now, and I'm not, no disrespect to anybody, and I'm not disparaging people, because we've got people that are managing multiple priorities. But clearly, I think we need to have some vision about where we want to see it and how it goes. And I think that, you know, that's there. My next question is actually for the CAO, and some of it has to do with his background and in terms of expertise, but also from a management and administrative process. So after we go back out and we have public consultation, and it comes back and we have a plan that's more ready to be approved, Mr. Bove, do you see us being able to approve this new plan without an implementation schedule? What I mean by that is, there's a number of steps that the plan identifies that we need to do in a whole range of things, understandable. But you can't do it all at once, and you can't not start any of it. You've got to sort of start at the beginning and take it step by step. But does it not need some type of an implementation schedule?
Through you, Your Worship, well, I think it would be important to develop something, whether that's something that John and his team assist with, or whether that's something done by staff. It would be a document that would be prepared and would be available for council and future councils as they determine their priorities every capital budget. And it would be a document as well that would tie in with our work that we're doing with our asset management plan. Obviously, you heard John today, some of the some of the issues we have relate to an underinvestment in maintaining what the city already has, and so we have to treat all of our parks and recreation facilities as the assets that they are, much like our road and municipal service infrastructure. And we need to put an appropriate amount of money into those facilities and properties every year so that they're maintained, and we don't find ourselves in a position where we're starting from scratch because something has been let go far too long. And unfortunately that happens, I think, in many municipalities, and Belleville's no different. So definitely the implementation plan would be, I think, a requirement to get the full value out of the master plan as we go forward.
I'm glad to hear that, because I think, we can't just leave it up to annual capital budget years. It's got to be part of a long-term strategy, and we've got to know that, A comes before B, which becomes, before C, and we've got to have that plan. So I don't know who would answer this next question, whether it be Mr. Beauvais or Mr. Ashton, but I guess, the discussion about a new indoor facility, which is very interesting. It proposes in the study here that it would be 2 pads and a pool, and I'm going to make an assumption that that would be somewhere on the west end of the city as we look at future growth. So the question is, should we put into the future subdivision, development agreements, whatever, master plans, structure plans, whatever it is, should we put into those agreements, put our markers down now on where a new recreation facility would go, because it would be required based on the development in those areas. How do we put that into our plan so that developers, residents, real estate agents, everybody knows that they're going to have another facility in this area when the development occurs there?
So I've already had discussions with our consulting group that's doing the Loyalist secondary plan update, and I said that there is a new rec plan, and as soon as that's approved, we'll have to look at incorporating the recommendations into the Loyalist secondary plan update. So I would assume they would look at where an appropriate land area is within the Loyalist secondary plan area and then create policies around that.
And so would we identify those areas like we would with future schools, for example, and say that this is where we're going to have a multi-use indoor recreation facility, and the exact details about it would still be, we'd have to wait till we get there, but basically we know that's where it's going to go?
So we just had our kickoff meeting for the Loyalist secondary plan, so in my mind we might want to look at that, but I'm sure there's other options, so I would probably come back and make sure that we address that specifically and then report back to council as part of the Loyalist secondary plan update.
Okay. So then I have 2 more questions, and the first one deals with what everybody always asks, is how are you going to pay for it? And so, we have these long-term requirements for us to provide infrastructure, including recreational infrastructure. So Mr. Beauvais or Director Hines, we're now going through this the study on development charges and moving forward for the next 5 years. But clearly we need to start putting something aside in some type of a reserve to be able to pay for this facility at the future. Is that part of what we look at as we consider increases to the current development charge rates, that we start to now put aside some funding for something like a multi-use facility, or at least for the parks and Parkland and Recreation Master Plan implementation? Not sure who wants to answer that one.
Well, I'll give it a start, and then maybe Director Hines can jump in. I think the city, we would have to look at how we incorporate a new facility like that into our development charges bylaw. Obviously, the need for the facility is being driven by growth in the community, so there's a need for that growth to contribute to the cost, but it's not going to pay the whole cost, so there would be there would have to be more attention paid to, how the city sets aside reserves for this facility and other needs as we go forward, not just a new recreation facility, but anything that comes out of this Parks and Rec master plan or other future plans for that matter. It applies to infrastructure as well. So we would definitely have to incorporate it into future DCs, and the benefit there is the DC bylaw is renewed every 5 years, so we can incorporate that in as we go along over the years until such time as council determines that it's time that the facility needs to be built.
Yeah,
We certainly welcome the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We're really excited to finally see this get moved into fruition, and certainly we've been really paying attention to it as we develop the 2022 draft capital budget. There are a number of items within the draft budget that speak to some of the more obvious and more urgent priorities that are addressed in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. In terms of putting money aside, I think there's two things. There's certainly we need to put money aside for asset management and replacement, and I would suggest that that's probably the number one priority. Beyond that, we can look at through capital budgeting. I think one of the projects that's already in the budget is looking at a new multi-use facility. And so there is a little bit of seed money started there. But I mean, certainly we have to be cognizant of the fact that we have to maintain what we have. We need to plan for the future, and we need to protect the interests of the taxpayer, because I would also remind that, the source of funding for any of these provisions will be property taxation. So we have to be prudent.
Well, I think it's timely as we're considering the new development charge bylaw that will be coming to a public meeting in November, and then council making a final decision in December. So I think it's important. And Mr. Bovie, I think the last question is for you, and it just deals with a structural issue. It's great to have plans, and they certainly provide guidance, but you actually have to follow the plan, and you have to have people who consider the plan and report regularly and give updates. And I know in the report it talks about creating an interdepartmental working group as a way to implement the plan. And so I guess the question is, how does this council and future councils stay on top of the items that are identified in the plan? How do we ensure that it is a coordinated, logical growth of these services, and then we don't get ourselves back in the situation that we are now, where we have 0 basketball courts in the city and we have 0 tennis courts in the city, and now trying to catch up becomes a real overwhelming issue. Is the interdepartmental working group sufficient? I know the report recommends an additional full-time person to help with bringing it forward, but what can we do to ensure that both we and the public have confidence that this plan will actually be enacted and we'll see that progress?
Through you, Your Worship, I think it's probably a combination of all those things that you mentioned. We do need to look at our staffing. There was some changes earlier this year in the parks area, and getting someone in there dedicated to dealing with some of our parks projects on a full-time basis, and separating out some of the daily supervision of staff, which is a full-time job in its own right. So we've certainly taken steps that way, and obviously as the city grows and our demand for recreational areas and facilities grows, then there will be a need for additional staff, both to get those facilities designed and built, but also to maintain them and to keep them in the order that they need to be. At the present time, as council knows, we're going through a reorganization review that HR is working on, and that will look at some of the issues that do come into play and why sometimes some of the best laid plans get completed and then collect dust on a shelf. We don't want to see that anymore. Most communities run across that from time to time. We want to have a structure within the city that stays on top of these plans and use those plans to provide the direction to council that council needs so that they can make informed decisions on behalf of all the residents of the community.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sandison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excellent presentation, John. I have a question, and I'm not sure who's best able to answer it. How and when was this Phase 2 report distributed to the members of council? Can anybody tell me?
It was sent by email to us.
Yeah, has everybody received a copy?
You had to go and download it. You received an email with a link in it to download it. I know, Councillor Sandison, we had it in September because I took it with me to read it, and but there was a link with a hyperlink.
I just checked with my fellow councillors to my right and left, and neither one of them have it either. So maybe there's a problem with the file.
Okay, well, we can certainly get that back out to everybody. It's you know, two-sided document. It's 100. And it's about 125 pages long, I think. So we'll get that out to everybody. We'll put a hard copy in your
I also
mailbox.
took the opportunity to look on the city website, and there was nothing there either, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? So sorry about that, Mr. Hack. I thought we had distributed it. We'll check and find out to make sure that it's out there. So the next stages for you are going to go public with this and.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. So as Councillor Sandison has just indicated, nothing on the website. So I think our job now is just to work with city administration to post both Phase 1 and Phase 2 reports for public review, as well as I would suggest this presentation, which gives people an easy entry point into it. We would then convene a public meeting, and we had a very successful one about a year ago where we went through a process of doing an online meeting. We will speak and get the advice as to whether we're doing in-person meetings and how. My preference would be if we could do this through some sort of public information centre as you would traditionally and normally. In other words, we create boards. If someone wants to read the report, they can read it online. But to have a process where they can come and actually hear from the consultants and relevant staff on the plan, that would be ideal. And if we could do that within the next, say, 6 weeks, that would be good. But obviously governed by health protocols on that.
Okay, and then when do you expect to have? You know, this is the final report, but after the public feedback and reception, that you get it back to us. As Director Hines mentioned, we have some of these items that I think you've covered off are in consideration for this year's capital budget or for next year's capital budget, but there are operational budget issues. Would we be seeing this before the spring?
Yeah, you certainly would be, Your Worship. I think if it does say final, I apologize, it is final draft in that we provided it and then there was staff review and then we recreated it as a draft. It's draft because it has to go to you and then to the public for review. So it will be final once we hear from the public and take on board their commentary. Certainly Q1 is the aim there, that you get everything through and hopefully with a recommendation for adoption. If I can, just on the implementation plan, I think that's certainly a reasonable request to go and get to that level of detail. At the back of the report, there is an appendix, which is the beginnings of that process, where we've itemized every recommendation by whether it should be near-term, medium-term, or longer-term, and then where the responsibility might lie within the administration. But that really is the beginnings. I think the implementation plan that Your Worship is referring to would be a standalone piece that is a schedule of how you would actually do this and potentially fund these items as well. So just for information on that.
Okay, thank you very much. We look forward to those next steps and receiving it. So the resolution is that the deputation by John Hack, Sierra Planning, regarding the final draft report, Parks and Recreation Master Plan, be received. Moved by Councillor Alsap, second by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Hack. Appreciate it. So there is no correspondence today, so we'll move on to Committee of the Whole, and I need a motion to go into Committee of the Whole to hear and consider reports, passing of recommendations and resolutions with myself and the Chair. Moved by Councillor Alsap, second by Councillor Sandison. All in favour? It's carried. We'll move to 8A under reports, which items shall warrant individual attention from Council. 8A1 is the replacement of virtual desktop infrastructure, also known as VDI. It is the Manager of Information Systems Report number MIS 2021-02, and the resolution is that the request for proposal submission from Xentegra Canada for RFP IS 2021-01, P35-21, replacement of the VDI system be accepted in the amount of $193,840 plus $25,199.20 HST for a total amount of $219,039.20, this being the most qualified proposal received, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the Corporation of the City of Belleville, and the City Clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Questions and discussion. Councillor Thompson. We're in Committee of the Whole now, so you can stay.
If I could have Manager Coyle come forward, sort of explain it. I'm not a tech person by any means, so if I could have him sort of explain what this is, so get it in my language.
VDI, through the chair, is basically we take 4 computers and we make them think they're 250 and share them with the staff. So rather than having to buy full-blown laptops or computers for everybody, they just need any device to connect to it, and then they have their entire desktop there. Also has a fantastic security implications because all of the data stays in City Hall. It can't be reached out. You're basically just remote controlling a computer, and it's you know, a glorified way of providing desktop services very inexpensively. That's much less expensive than 250 full-blown units. So that's what we're right now running 2008, so we're due for an upgrade. We squeezed every dollar out of what we have.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions? I'll call it. All in favor? It's carried. 8A2, request for proposals, RFP ENG 2021-23, consulting services for detailed design of South Foster Avenue reconstruction, Dundas Street East to the Keegan Parkway. It is the project manager's report number ENG 2021-26, and the resolution is that the request for proposals, RFP ENG 2021-23, submission from Greer Galloway Consulting Engineers, be accepted for consulting services for the detailed design of South Foster Avenue reconstruction, Dundas Street East to Keegan Parkway in the City of Belleville, in the amount of $335,266 plus $43,584.58 HST, for a total dollar amount of $378,850.58, this being the highest ranked qualified bid received, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the Corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the City Clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Alsop. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 8A3, consulting services to prepare NG 911 plan. It is the Fire Chief, Director of Fire and Emergency Services, report number FES 2021-11, and that the resolution is that in accordance with Section 30.3, sole and single sourcing, approval and reporting of the City's purchasing bylaw number 2021-99, the quotation from federal engineering be accepted for the provision of consulting services to prepare a next generation 911 plan in the amount of $78,975.70, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the Corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the City Clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal, and that the 2021 capital budget be amended to include the NG 911 project with funding in the amount of $71,200 provided by the Capital Equipment Reserve Fund. Moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor McCaw. Any questions or discussion? All right, I see none, so I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. 8A4, pop-ups on the Bay Business Development Plan. It is the Manager of Economic and Strategic Initiatives report number ECDEV 2021-30. And the resolution is that pursuant to the Manager of Economic and Strategic Initiatives report number ECDEV 2021-30, providing a general overview of the 2021 season and recommendations moving forward be received, and that $75,000 in capital improvements of the pop-up project be referred to the 2022 capital budget for consideration. Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Feeney. Any questions or discussion? Councillor Sandison.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the report, so the pop-ups are now, we just completed our third year and it's been very successful. I think that it's matured to the point that it needs to perhaps fall under the umbrella of the Recreation, Culture and Community Services Group, i.e. Take it from the EDDC committee, which is a committee that is strained for resources, for lack of a better word, and maybe it fits with the organizational review discussions that are occurring currently, but I think it's now matured such that it should just be part of standard fare. So I don't know what the right way to say it, but I think there should be direction to staff to at least examine whether we should move that as part of the organizational discussion. But I'll certainly welcome any comments that anybody has on that.
You know, I would be concerned, Councillor Sandison, with making that decision now, particularly as we don't have a permanent director of Recreation, Culture and Community Services, and that there is a fair amount of detail work in terms of working with the individual vendors to sign them up. You know, I'm not sure if Ms. Post has anything she wants to add about that. You know, it's I know that department is under strain, and we often hear about workload and their ability. But you know, I would say that while this program has gone on for 3 years and it's been successful, we've done it during the most difficult times ever. 2 years of COVID has not been easy, and you know, I'm just not sure if moving this year is the right time. But Manager Post, do you have anything you want to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just maybe just want to highlight the fact that there is a whole business support component to pop-ups. So a lot of what we're doing is supporting and consulting with these businesses. Many of them are startups or small businesses that are looking to expand. So for us in economic development, not only is it a valuable tourism product that we're trying to get up and running and being successful, but it's also sort of supporting the launch of some new businesses or some expanded businesses. And that component of it maybe doesn't fit as well with an RCCS management.
But I take, Councillor Sandison, I take your point well, though, that this may be something we want to have considered as part of the organizational review. And I know CEO Bove was paying attention when you made that suggestion. And I think we can maybe have that as included as part of that whole process, whether events like pop-ups on the bay and other outdoor events are better supported in different departments. They can certainly consider that, if that's acceptable to you.
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Good discussion, though. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks for Councillor Sandison for bringing the conversation to the table. I just, as the chair of the EDDC, the first year was at Riverside Park, and as the mayor touched on, the last 2 years we've been dealing with the pandemic, and I would like to see this still have the EDDC involved with this, because our partners on that committee is Doug Stevenson of the Bay of Quinney Regional Marketing Board. There's already some tourism experts, if you will, that are working with the EDDC on this. Also, late August, early September, things were starting to open up at Westwicks Park, and it was an afternoon of music at the Lions Pavilion, and we had some entertainers doing kids programs, and there was a renewed energy in the park that day. And if we see a shift in Ontario in March, and when that gives us enough time to really work for that 13 or 14 weeks over the course of the summer, I can really see 2022 being completely different. And I'm hoping, Mr. Sandison, you will
Councillor.
believe with us and give us that shot and forget about this thought of moving it elsewhere and give us next summer. Thank you.
So just if I can
Councillor
respond to
Sandison?
my colleague, Councillor Kelly. So the idea that occurred to me was twofold. Was one, that it had reached a level of maturity that perhaps somebody else could look after it. And then the other thing is, I think it's an opportunity that we haven't capitalized on as a council, is that, you know, leveraging the Quinney Sports and Wellness Center to host events. And I think that's something that, you know, certainly COVID has impacted our ability to do that. And given that the pop-ups are, you know, quite some time away, and we are going to have a new director at some point in time, that was the reason for moving it. Not that people aren't doing a good job, not that people aren't involved, not that we don't network with the right people. It's just that I thought organizationally it may be a better organizational fit. And that's the only reason for it. But certainly, it's not something I'm pushing for. It's just something that I think we should consider. Thank you.
Good. All right, anyone else in this? Councillor Malette.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to support the motion for funding of a business plan. I think this is the report. Thank you, Manager Post, for this report. It's excellent. I note that with 8 returning businesses in 2021, I mean, that shows, you know, shows me 2 things. Shows me that the idea is popular. It was a, you talk to people from outside the area. I have a chance to be in the county quite often, and, you know, as you know, Prince Edward County is a happening place in the summer for tourism attractions. The pop-ups on the bay are mentioned just in casual conversation among people saying, what's there to do if you get to Belleville, kind of thing. So to have 8 returning and make the commitment, and trust me, that's a commitment. That's a major commitment when you think about the challenges of COVID and the facilities themselves. I mean, they're pretty Spartan. Let's face it. You're not working with a completely rebuilt air-conditioned restaurant with air exchange and the whole bit. So I think we've hit on something really well. I think to fine-tune it and let it go for the 2022 season, as Councillor Kelly mentioned, I think you'll really see it take off. But once we have that business plan in place, that's the time I think we can have those discussions of where we go managing this, what has now become clearly a municipal asset, a tourism asset for the region. So I will support that. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. And I do know the motion has this referring to capital budget, which we can certainly debate in more detail. But I just wanted to say that, you know, to commend the vendors for investing in the last 2 years, particularly with COVID and the difficulties. And I know this summer, and it's pointed out in the report, there was some rainy weather in July, which made it difficult. But they persevered and stayed true. And when we look back at just a couple of years ago, when that park would sit there in the summertime, and aside from some play equipment and the walking trails, the numbers were quite low in terms of use. And the intended purpose was to activate this portion of the city. And I think it's a great location. As my colleague points out to the fact there's a lot of county traffic, the fact that it's there at the bridge along the waterfront entering into the county, you know, and I was there a few times this summer, and you know, and one thing that you know, for myself is we as a family spent a lot of time just staying there, bringing lawn chairs and spending time there, which we wouldn't necessarily do without things going on in terms of food and different activities. So I think it's serving its purpose. And from an economic development perspective, you've got, yes, some established businesses, but you've got some others that are just starting out. And I know there's been a couple there that you know, I think there was a bake shop, sorry. This entrepreneur was baking out of his home or trying to find locations, and starting out here to see if this would work, and then look at potential locations within the city. And that's exactly the intent, is to start out small to see if you can make the product work. And then from there, who knows, maybe they're get into a position where they're now renting someplace and still have this location. So it's certainly, from an economic development perspective, it's serving its purpose. And from a recreational tourist perspective, it's certainly achieving good results. And as we see the commitment through the pandemic, and I'm optimistic that 2022 will be a little bit better, we hope, that, you know, there's even greater things to come. So certainly, you know, just wanted to say thank you to the people who invested over that, the course of the last couple of years through difficult times, and look forward to debating this further at capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, just in following up on Councillor Carr's comment, you know, we really haven't had a good year with the pop-ups yet, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but if you remember, we had Councillor Williams brought this forward, and we had all this optimism about how this is going to be a great program. We're going to have it at Victoria Island in the first year. We set up all the infrastructure, and then we had flooding, and then we had to relocate it to Riverside Park, which was not good, but we were also concerned about the flooding at West Wicks. And then we moved it to, then we said, okay, you know, that was too bad, but we're going to move it next year to West Wicks, and then COVID hit, and then we weren't even sure we could do it, and then we had to negotiate with the health unit, and then you know, this year again we had a lot of negotiations with the health unit about what was actually permitted, and it was very difficult to try to plan an outdoor activity that brought people to provide business without gathering anyone. You know, I mean, our staff worked hard, and they did a great job, and they're there. You know, with all the good news that we are seeing, 2022 promises, knock on wood, promises that we are not going to have a high water event, and we are not going to have those COVID restrictions where we can welcome people back. And I know staff are looking at repositioning the pop-up so that they can create more of a communal atmosphere, and you know, and we'll talk about the capital improvements that we want this year, but that was always the intention. But I think Councillor Sandison's point is a good one as well, in that, you know, what is the best way to support this initiative going forward? I think after this year, when we get a chance, hopefully, to see what this can really be like, that will give us the information that we need moving forward, and I look forward to that time. And it just, you know, we've basically, you know, how do I say this? I don't want to disrespect anybody that's been involved, but we've almost lost 2 years. You know, the people came out and did it. They you know, as Councillor Carr said, they stepped up to provide this service, and people did come out and support it, but it was under the most difficult times. We're looking forward to a better time when we'll get a better picture of things. So, yeah, 2022 will be a better year, right, everybody? So I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. We'll move to consent items, where council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. So I'll go around the table, see if anyone would like to pull anything. Councillor McCaw? No, thank you. Councillor Sandison?
No, thank you.
Councillor Alsop?
No, thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
No, thank you.
Councillor Carr?
No, thank you.
Councillor Feeney?
No, thank you.
Councillor Malette?
8B5 and 8B6.
Councillor Kelly?
No, thank you.
All right, so then the motion is that the following agenda items be approved with the exception of items 8B5 and 8B6. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? It's carried. 8B5 is B City Canada Program. It is the General Manager of Environmental Services, report number GMES 2021-16, and the resolution is that pursuant to the General Manager of Environmental Services, report number GMES 2021-16, B Canada Program, the City of Belleville adopt the B Canada resolution and become a member of B City Canada. Moved by Councillor Malette, seconded by Councillor Sandison. Councillor Malette, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Quickly, I just want to, for anyone who might look at this as something that might be frivolous, this membership as a B bee city, you would be mistaken because, as we know, sorry about that.
Get out the goat.
Sorry. Yes, well, as we've heard in previous iterations of our programs to promote pollinators, pollinators, which bees are possibly the apex pollinator that we know of, are very important for the future of the planet. Basically, without bees, we won't, we as a species will struggle to exist because of the importance of bees and other pollinators to pollinate food crops. I earlier looked up some information. Bees are responsible for pollinating 35% of all agricultural production and almost 90 different commercially grown food crops. Bees are crucial to our existence, and anywhere and everywhere we can. We spoke about this as well with our garden plots, with our Let It Grow campaign. Councillor Sandison happened upon the Bee City Canada initiative. We had a great discussion at committee over this, and I hope you'll all take a little bit of time to look at just what becoming a bee city is. And let's face it, the number of communities since 2016, 54 other communities in Canada have signed on to become bee communities. And it's simply an awareness thing for the most part, and there are practical things where our works and parks departments will promote areas that will help pollinators flourish. But the more we're aware of the importance of bees, populations, as anyone who's read the news, have plummeted throughout the world because of various factors, climate, largely nicotinoid pesticides, but hopefully they're on the mend. And again, as I said, bee and other pollinators are crucial to our existence as a species. This is more important than just a fancy, I hope we get signage that has a honeybee on it somewhere that we can put up. But thank you, and thank you for your support on this initiative. It is very important. Thank you.
Right. Anyone else on this? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks to Councillor Malette for bringing this to the table today. I think it's really important, and I checked. I went to the bees website, the honeybees website, and Trent Hills is the closest municipality in our area that are involved with this. And there's quite a few colleges in Ontario. Loyalist is not on that map, so I know Councillor Malette will build those relationships with Loyalist, and it would be nice to be recognized as a community behind this, because we've had the conversation here at the City Council about the birds with the chickens, and now we're talking about the bees, so it's the birds and the bees with City Hall.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Sandison.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to ask Councillor Kelly to beehive.
All right. Anyone else? I don't think we can top it, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. 8B6, Open Air Burning Information Report. Fire Chief, Director, Fire and Emergency Services Report number FES 2021-10. And the resolution is that the Fire Chief's report number FES 2021-10 on the current status of open air burning as defined under bylaw 2021-12 be received. Moved by Councillor Malette, seconded by Councillor Feeney. Councillor Malette, you had asked for this one.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I see Chief Belair is here. Chief, could I ask you to just come to the podium? I just have a couple of quick questions. And being as I had requested this report earlier in September, or yes, earlier. Thank you, Chief. The numbers here are, you know, the number of complaints I see is to be expected, I would suppose. You know, out of total of 59 complaints, some of them clearly would likely be repeat complainants. But I was a little troubled to see that the number of people who are actually complying with, A, the having a permit, and B, burning in a proper manner. Is there anything, I see that the response have clearly identified a need for additional public engagement. How would you like to see that engagement?
So through you, Your Worship, just if I could raise one point, this is a brand new bylaw for Ward 1. And through my experience in the fire service, anytime I brought out an open-air burning bylaw in a municipality, there's a huge learning curve. And one thing you've got to twofold here is knowledge is power. So when you look at it, if you know about the burning bylaw and your neighbor's burning and they don't know, you're going to call and complain. If you are burning and you don't know about the burning bylaw, you don't know about it, and so you don't realize you're doing something wrong. So the education piece is huge for us because it increases the calls for service because people are complaining about it, but on the other hand, people aren't aware, so how do we bring awareness up? So for us, you know, there's different avenues. Yes, we can be more vocal with PSA announcements. There's the opportunity in maybe the tax bills or hydro bills, if we reach out to them saying, listen, this is an opportunity for us to educate all of the residents about the burning bylaw. But really, we've only just seen the beginning of it. So the numbers with COVID, you know, people aren't going out, people are staying home. I would actually say in the next couple of months, don't be surprised that we are not going to see an increase as it gets colder. We have transients, people are going to try and stay warm. The education piece there will be big for us as well, visiting these areas and letting them know what the burning bylaw is and try and find alternate methods for them during the cold season.
Thank you, Chief. And I have one further question. I know that when we approved this bylaw to allow burning in the urban area earlier this year, I believe it was last January, we did so against the recommendation of the fire service who had expressed concerns. We do now. Now it's in place. It's pretty hard to get the genie back in the bottle. I can't see us rescinding urban burning. But in the experience, I guess, in just the initial year, has the fire service found that it's workable? Are there any changes, perhaps, to the bylaw? I know the reason I brought this was I had a number of people reach out to me after one who talked to others, for health reasons, whatever, had smoke issues. I think that's probably one of the biggest issue of complaint that I've had. But in your opinion, I guess, you mentioned that other urban areas have enacted this. Is there anything you would like to see, or is there anything we need to amend to the bylaw, or is it too early to tell?
I think I'd like to continue with the trial period for at least one more year to see as we work our way out of COVID, people are moving around again. Just to give you some examples of this, I am a huge purporter. I'll be upfront with council. I absolutely support a burning bylaw. I think it's imperative. In fact, it does fall in line with the fire code. Second of all, like, if you look in the report, we had some people complaining of candles. Sometimes we have to be very cautious of neighbor disputes and the use of the bylaw. We've actually had complaints of people complaining that their neighbor is smoking a cigarette on their back deck and thinks it's in contravention of the bylaw when they phone in and complain about it. So I just think we have to be very cautious of how the bylaw is being perceived. It is in its first infancy stage. The education piece is there. I think, like I said, we really need to push forward on that, but I would like to just give it a little bit more time before we make any suggestions on changing the bylaw.
Fair enough. Thanks, and thanks for the information provided. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, through you. And in keeping with the component you speak of, the messaging, we have a pretty good avenue here with our Belleville magazine, and I wonder if that's something that could be included in our Belleville magazine. It does go to every household. Maybe that's one part of it. Maybe we need more than that. But sometimes when you see things a few times, you tend to remember it or take notice. So maybe that is one way we can do it using our Belleville magazine.
Yeah, you know, and along those lines, I think the chief mentioned public service announcements, and maybe that is something that we even want to do next spring, perhaps, when we have what I call the residential, when people are going to be going back outside and thinking about having a campfire, just to let them know what the rules are. You know, particularly Councillor Malette had talked about people burning inappropriate substances, so they're burning their garbage, they're burning, you know, materials that have chemicals on them that really they shouldn't be burning them, and I think that's it's exacerbating some of the issues and whatnot. But that's a good idea. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just one quick statement. I was encouraged. I haven't had anybody call me about the open air burning, but that doesn't mean that Councillor Malette hasn't had lots of them or anybody else. But I was encouraged by the complaint has decreased since the inception of the bylaw, and that means a lot to me that, you know, we're showing a decrease when we put a bylaw into place. And, you know, I would hope over a period of time that it'll be less and less. So I was encouraged with the decrease in the amount of reports. So thank you.
Great. Anyone else on this? So I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. So we'll move on to 8C, Council Information Matters, and we only have the one. And so I will ask for a motion to approve the building section month-end report for the report period of September 2021. Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Malette. Anyone have any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, all in favor, it's carried. Motion to rise and report. Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Sandison. All in favor, carried. Bylaws. So we only have one bylaw today. So we'll do first reading of bylaw 2021-174, a bylaw to appoint municipal bylaw enforcement officers for the purpose of enforcing bylaw number 9457 and part 3, section 3, which is parking of vehicles on private property, and section 6, handicap parking zones of bylaw 12967, as they affect the areas of land and premises located at 289 Front Street parking lot. Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor, it's carried. Second reading of bylaw number 2021-174. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Alsap. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, it's carried. And third and final reading of bylaw number 2021-174. Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Carr. All in favor, it's carried. New business. And so right before I start with my message, I just want to let everybody know that Manager Brown Cave sent an email just with the Parkland and Recreation Master Plan information. You should all have got it. He also sent it appears on September the 24th, and it went to Mayor and Council and a number of people on the executive team of the city. So again, if you did not get it, then I would follow up with IT Manager Mark Coyle, because it could be that there's a problem with this link. And you know, I'm not the most IT sophisticated person, but there are, I understand, firewalls and spam filters and all kinds of things. So those things could have happened, but we certainly want you to be able to have it. Once again, I would like to take a moment to thank our residents and business owners for adhering to the regulations that continue to be in place during the Government of Ontario's reopening plan, which has been updated since last week. I know that the policies in place continue to impact our daily lives, and I appreciate everyone's contribution as we, as a country, a province, and even our city, work to find a balance between carrying on with life while also keeping our residents safe. City Hall continues to be open to the public from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and online, phone, and Dropbox services continue to be offered as an alternative to coming into City Hall physically, and the public is encouraged to continue using these options whenever possible. As of September 22nd, the city introduced a identification and proof of COVID-19 vaccination policy for entrance to all municipal buildings. Individuals 12 years of age and older wishing to enter city buildings are required to provide personal identification and proof of the COVID-19 vaccination each time they seek entry into a city building, and that is a full vaccination, meaning both doses. Those residents wishing to meet with engineering, planning, and building officials on the second floor are still advised to book an appointment. Anyone looking for marriage license and commissioner of oath services are encouraged to call the clerk's office to confirm that you have all the required documentation. The Belleville Public Library continues to be open to the public for their newly extended hours, opening earlier and staying open later. Exact hours are available at bellevillelibrary.ca, and traditional library services continue to be exempt from the vaccine passport system. I'd also like to advise all motorists that the city's winter parking restrictions come into effect on November the 1st. In accordance with the city's parking bylaw, overnight parking between 1 a.m. and 6 p.m. is now prohibited starting on November 1st on all city streets and continues until April the 15th. The Quinney Sports and Wellness Centre continues to move forward with their staggered road to reopening plan. The CA Arena, Templeman Aquatic Centre, 50 Plus Centre, and the Family Dental Centre indoor walking track are now open, and the workout studios will begin to reopen this month with safety restrictions. The gymnasium will also open once we relocate the vaccination centre from there to the FDC Arena, and I'm not sure yet about the timing on that. Please note that pre-registration is required in most cases and that all persons entering the Quinney Sports and Wellness Centre are required to show proof of vaccination with some exceptions. We encourage the public to check out the Quinney Sports and Wellness Centre website for all the most up-to-date details. The provincial vaccine booking system remains open, and the vaccination centre, as I said, at the Quinney Sports and Wellness Centre, continues to operate under the management of Public Health and our Quinney Sports and Wellness Centre team. Thank you very much to the Hastings and Prince Edward Public Health Unit and the city and all of our city employees for creating a safe and accessible space for residents to receive their COVID-19 vaccinations. As a council, we remain collectively and singularly focused on your health and safety in all of our decisions. We thank all residents for their cooperation and support of our efforts and encourage everyone to get vaccinated as soon as they are able to. I do have one more thing under new business, but I'll wait until the end. Does anyone else have any items for new business? Councillor Alsap.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So it has been a couple weeks now since we saw the Mentos refreshment of the Kiwanis skate park, and I think that the company had an abundance of enthusiasm and certainly some good intentions, but I have received a number of complaints I wanted to bring to everyone's attention and hopefully direct staff to report back to us at a later date. They fall under two primary categories, one being paint, the other being nets. On the paint side, I've heard some issues expressed in terms of depth of field because of the monotone color. Also surface traction, particularly in the bowl during wet weather events or if there's some mist in the morning. And then also glare, particularly arising from the street plaza segment where there's painted ledges on brighter days, often with the lighter color. It provides quite a bit of glare, and that affects people's ability to gauge how far away the obstacle is, how high they have to jump, things of that nature. On the net side of it, again, three main points, a lot of commentary, but the important part is safety regarding biking and skateboarding around the nets. Also issues with conflicts between user groups. And then the third point being balls and other sort of projectiles rolling around the park surface as a result of the basketball on the park surface. So hoping to hear a report back from staff if that's the will of council.
Yeah, so we can get that, Councillor Alsap, for those two areas. One is I'm sorry, the term is for the grip of the, there's a term.
Yes, the traction.
The traction of the paint and how it's affected by rain, as well as the depth perception for people in the bowl so they can, as they go through it. And then secondly is the placement of the nets. And if it's not available for the November 8th meeting, we'll have that report for you for the December 13th meeting. And thanks for bringing it up. You'll have a report.
Great,
Good.
thank you, sir.
Councillor Kelly.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to mention some parents with students at Parkdale Public School reached out to me with some concerns about just one sidewalk on Poplar Street that leads into Parkdale Public School. It's a school JK to grade 8, 350 students. No kids are bused there. They all walk, and it's been a challenge since September. Some parents have reached out to me, and I've spoken to Director Steve Ashton about this, and we're making some progress. So I just wanted to go on the record with that for the parents at Parkdale. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sandison.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too was approached on the same subject as Councillor Kelly. I don't know whether it was by the same people. Well, there you go. We're getting lots of coverage. So I'll leave it in his capable hands. I won't add anything to that. So on the other item I'll bring up is on November the 7th, the Green for Life, GFL, are going to be taking over the Blue Box recycling. So we've just recently received confirmation that the truck drivers and all the sort staff are going to become GFL employees. So we shouldn't see any difference in the pickup or schedule or customer service. So just to share that with council. Thank you.
Great. And just to remind everybody, the schedule for your recycling and blue box pickup is exactly the same. So if it's Friday, they continue to pick up on Friday. If it's Monday, they'll continue. That hasn't changed. And as Councillor Sandison said, the staff are familiar with the routes. We're not expecting any issues in terms of delays on this transition. Thank you for covering for that. Okay, seeing none other, I do have one more item, and I'm I think it's important that I bring it up. I am calling on Shorelines Casino Management and the Unifor local representatives to get back to the bargaining table. Last week, negotiations broke off and the membership walked out at that facility. And over the course of the weekend, we were dealing with safety issues in terms of public access. I attended the site on Saturday, late Saturday afternoon, and had a very cordial conversation. I appreciate the union representatives ensuring that if an emergency vehicle has to come, they can enter safely. But I do call on both sides to get back to the negotiating table and come to an agreement. This disruption is not good for the business, it's not good for the employees, and it's not good for our community. The collective bargaining agreement is there and should be used for them to get to a negotiated settlement, and I encourage them to do so. There are no motions today. Notice of motions. Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, through your worship. I'd like to make a notice of motion today for council to give direction to staff to investigate all legal options available to our municipality, up to including a limit on single-family residential homes being used for short-term rental accommodations, also to include a need to reside bylaw, and a possible purchase levy on all properties purchased by non-residents in an effort to cool the existing housing crisis in our city.
Okay, and you have that in writing. So if we'll get a copy. Just one moment, please. Thank you, Council. I was just asking Mr. McDonald, we have a report coming at the November 8th meeting from our last meeting where we directed staff to bring a report with a bylaw for licensing. So, Councillor McCaw, when we receive the written text of your motion, we'll consider it. It's likely some of it will be dealt with before we get to the motion section, but it also may be out of order depending on what the report is that's coming. You may have the ability to amend it at that point. It's actually to your advantage to do it under the report section because it only requires a simple majority where you may need a 6 instead of the 5 to pass something. So we'll take it, and if it's in order, it'll be part of the documents for the next meeting. Anyone else for notice of motions? Announcements. Anyone have any announcements? Councillor Malette.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have one, and it was a suggestion from my friend and our friend, Dave Allen, who said that if I didn't pump his play, he might not be our friend anymore. So Dave is an amateur thespian, good one at that, but we have a thriving amateur theater community in the city and in the area, and we're very fortunate to have an award-winning and an excellent playwright by the name of Peter Paler in our midst. And Theater in the Wings, if anybody hasn't heard of it, it's a small space over between the Bank of Montreal and Paulo's, well, right where the wings are, the wings mural. It's an intimate theater setting. It's a great little spot. I believe Mr. Dinkle, who, again, you know, quietly helping make some things happen downtown, has made this space available. But there's a play that opens this Wednesday, and it's a Peter Paler original play. And yes, it stars Dave Allen, amongst other talented thespians. But it begins this Wednesday. It runs through to Sunday. I believe Councillor Thompson's bought tickets. I bought a pair. The box office, you can go online. It's Theater in the Wings. The seating is 2 by 2, and I think the maximum seating in the room is somewhere around 30, 40 max, but 50, is it? Thanks, Kearney. But it's a great little setting, amateur theater production, and there's more to come. I know they're preparing for a Christmas play as well. So just it's really encouraging to see amateur theater in this manner, and I'll tell you, there's some really talented actors in this area. And again, Peter Paler, a gem of a playwright and a great writer. So I encourage everybody to take a moment, check it out, maybe take in a play. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Through you, Mayor, just a quick thank you to everyone in the city that came out 8 days ago for the city's first Diwali Festival of Lights, and thanks to the support from the Mayor and my colleagues here that had a chance to come on that Sunday, October the 17th. It was the biggest, I think, celebration in the city in the last couple of years, and it's a festival that we can really grow with, and we've had a great team to work with the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee. So really proud to be involved with that. And Sheila Alexander, who works for the city, was a part of this special day, made sure all councillors got a happy Diwali, November 4th, and that's when the Diwali festival kicks off this year around the world, November the 4th, and you can take that home. So thank you for supporting it, all my colleagues here and the city staff for making sure that the day was picture perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. And I did hear through the grapevine that David Allen had the threatened Councillor Malette to buy the tickets, but it is a good theater, and I encourage everybody. But Saturday night, I attended a small ceremony. This family donates money to a cause every year on an anniversary of a death of their son, Mr. Aaron Rushlow died about 5 years ago. On Saturday night, they made a donation of $250 to the Sea Cadets. Every year they donate to something, so I just wanted to make note that I was happy to attend just as a friend, but also to represent the city, and I brought greetings on behalf of the city. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good. Councillor Alsop.
Oh, I left it on. There you go. How convenient is that? Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to make an announcement today that the Humane Society has a week left for the matching contributions. Great program. The Johnson Martin family has stepped up. They'll match contributions in the month of October up to $50,000. Councillor Feeney, Councillor McCaw and I had a great time walking around last weekend, knocking on doors. I believe there's still some spots open for this next coming weekend if anyone's interested. It's a great program, obviously helps out with the building campaign for the Humane Society, which is sorely needed, and I hope to see you guys out there. And if you haven't donated yet, please go to ittakesheart.ca.
Great. Anyone else? Councillor Sandison? I'm sorry, I have her on the list. Councillor McCaw and then Councillor Sandison.
Sorry, thank you. And Councillor Alsop pretty much covered it up. I just want to say that we believe we will be in a Thurlow neighborhood, a Ward 2 neighborhood this coming Saturday. I think I have one volunteer, Councillor Sandison. So what we're going to do is pick his ward. And we'll, we're open to other volunteers. If you choose to come out, we're not collecting money at the door. We're just asking residents, we're making them aware of the campaign, first of all. And we're asking residents, to go to the website if they're so willing to donate. Anything helps. And as Councillor Alsop had mentioned, Jasper, Sampson, and their parents, the Johnson Martin family, are doing a matching dollar for dollar. So.
Terrific. Councillor Sandison.
Thank you, Your Worship. This past Wednesday, Councillor Feeney, Councillor McCaw, and myself took the opportunity to visit the Bridge Street Church drop-in, and that was a suggestion that Councillor Malette had thrown out to the group. And so we had the opportunity to meet with Steve Vandehoof, as well as Debbie Woods and Bobby Joe Kelly from the John Howard Society. So we spent about an hour with them, as well as talking to the people out front that are actually using the facility, as well as the volunteers. And it's a bit of an eye-opener, it really is. These people are doing great work. You can even sense that there's a trust being built up between the clientele, if you will, and the people that are there. We had the opportunity to meet with somebody that had just popped in to offer mental health sort of services or connectivity in the community. So there's a lot of good things happening there, and I'm glad that we're supporting them, and just wanted to share that with the group.
Thank you. And you know, a stat that's very sobering, I understand that they've, since March of 2020, they've now gone over 70,000 meals that have been served. So, you know, that's a staggering number, and it's whatnot. So, anyone else for new business, or sorry, announcements? Okay, I have a couple of proclamations and some items for new business. I would like to proclaim the entire month of November as Domestic Violence Prevention Month. We recognize this month as an opportunity to increase awareness about violence against women and the opening to create dialogue around this prevalent societal issue. I would also like to proclaim the week of November 7th to the 13th as Crime Prevention Week in Ontario. This year's theme, Safer Communities, Stronger Ontario, enables police services to promote the benefits of a collaborative response to local crime and social issues. On October the 13th, I was pleased to attend the grand opening of Evermind Belleville at 267 Front Street. Congratulations to owner Trevor Fair on this exciting new venture. I was also that same day, on October 13th, I was also able to attend the Mayor's Luncheon for the Arts held by the Quinte Arts Council. It was a wonderful event to recognize the 2021 Arts Recognition Award recipients. Congratulations to Bob House, Mark Hopper, Lisa Morris, Ralph Johnson, and the Bay of Quinte Regional Marketing Board. It was nice to be back in person at a luncheon again, to be able to celebrate this, and it was very worthy recipients. What a wonderful day we had in the city of Belleville for the unveiling of the newly constructed Memorial and Reflection Garden in honor and memory of Dr. James B. Collop, one of the co-inventors of insulin, who was raised right here in Belleville. The memorial and the garden has been erected along the Bayshore Trail behind the Belleville General Hospital, and just below it along the Keegan Parkway, and it's in recognition of Dr. Collop's work in the field of medicine, which has saved the lives of millions of diabetics, and his other advances that he contributed towards in medical research. And I want to pay a particular tribute to Rolly Tipper, Ian Sullivan, and Richard Hughes, as well as the other volunteers and our city staff that were involved in this tremendous legacy. We were proud to be joined by Dr. Collop's direct descendants, represented by his great-grandson, Major Charles Wyatt, and his family, who traveled from San Antonio, Texas. It was a wonderful day, and we look forward to another public event in January, indoors at the Parrott Gallery, which is going to be closer to the exact date of that discovery almost 100 years ago. On Sunday, October the 17th, as Councillor Kelly mentioned, the City of Belleville's Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee hosted our first ever Diwali celebration in George Zagoras Market Square. Diwali is India's most important festival of the year, a time to celebrate the triumph of light over darkness, knowledge over ignorance, and good over evil. Members of our community enjoyed music, dance performances, vendors, and some cultural stories. And a big thank you to Councillor Sean Kelly as the committee chair, and all of the members of that committee and staff for leading this initiative and hosting such a fantastic event. Belleville joined over 1 billion people around the world that celebrate this important holiday. Last week was Small Business Week, and I was honored to join other local representatives for the official kickoff on Monday, October the 18th. Small businesses are crucial to the health of our community, and I was proud to take a moment to recognize entrepreneurial spirit and resilience. A big congratulations to all the winners of this year's Quinney Business Achievement Awards, which were presented this past Friday, October 22nd, at the annual event. I want to thank Councillor Feeney, who attended in my place that evening and reported a very successful evening. I want to pay particular tribute to some of the Belleville winners this year of awards. In the health and wellness category, Quinney CPAP was awarded the winner. For the manufacturing business of the year, Hexo Corporation received that award, and I believe Councillor Feeney presented that one, right? She presented the tech one, which is the next one. The tech business of the year was won by OSM, and that was wonderful. Also, the trailblazer of the year was Tire Wizard, and business person of the year was Eric Lettinen, who is a good friend of all of ours. He serves the City of Belleville as a member of the Quinney Economic Development Commission. He is a very generous individual, including helping to sponsor the Diwali Festival this year, and comes from a long line of contributors to our economy, especially those who work at Impacto. Congratulations to all of them. Last week, I also enjoyed meeting with a great group of grade 5 students from Harry J. Clark Public School to chat about citizenship and government, my role as mayor, the responsibilities of municipal government, and important local issues. And it was great to be able, that was my first time since COVID, to be able to be back in touch with students. And later on that same day, I was honored to address the Quinney Home Builders Association during their first dinner back since COVID. It was in person, and I was able to review the many ways in which the City of Belleville has worked alongside the QHBA in support of progress and productive teamwork, and how we help that industry also get through the challenges of COVID. As I said, this was the first dinner meeting that I attended since March of 2020, and it was nice to be able to see our return to life getting back to normal. And I just want to finish off by saying, you know, certainly we are not out of the woods yet, and we need to remain vigilant about COVID, but we have worked so hard as a community, and those who are fully vaccinated deserve to be able to return to normalcy as a reward for the hard work that we have all put in. I look forward to seeing further relaxations as they become safe in our community, and it was a great day today as the province of Ontario starts the next stage of relaxations as we deal with COVID. With that, I will ask for a confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw number 2021-175, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Council at its meeting held on October 25th, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 25th day of October 2021. Moved by Councillor Alsap, second by Councillor McCaw. All in favour? It's carried. A motion to adjourn, Councillor McCaw and Councillor Feeney. All in favour? It's carried. Thank you, and we'll see everybody on November the 8th.